Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a total game changer in personal development, James Clear's Atomic Habits. If you've ever felt stuck in a rut, or if you've tried building a new habit only to completely abandon it like 3 days later, well, you're definitely in the right place. We're going to explore the absolute massive power of making tiny, seemingly insignificant changes in your life. We're talking about how these microscopic little adjustments can literally lead to truly remarkable results.
To really get a grip on how this works, we've got to look at one of the most fascinating turnarounds in sports history. How on earth did an incredibly ordinary team, British Cycling, manage to win 5 Tour de France titles in just 6 years? Because before 2003, professional cyclists in Great Britain had endured almost a century of pure mediocrity. Their performance was so underwhelming that a top bike manufacturer in Europe literally refused to sell them gear. They were actually afraid it would hurt their brand. Wild, right? But then, the team hired a guy named Dave Brailsford, and well, everything changed.
Brailsford brought with him this relentless commitment to a pretty brilliant strategy. He called it the aggregation of marginal gains. It's a fancy term, but his philosophy was actually super simple, yet completely revolutionary. He basically believed that if you broke down every single aspect of riding a bike, literally everything you could think of, and then improved each of those tiny parts by just 1%, well, you'd get a massive, significant increase when you put it all together.
And they applied this to, everything. Sure, they redesigned bike seats for comfort and used these electrically heated overshorts to keep their muscle temperature up. But they didn't stop there. No. They looked for marginal gains in the most unexpected places. We're talking testing different massage gels just to see which one led to faster recovery. They literally hired a surgeon to teach the riders the absolute best way to wash their hands so they wouldn't catch a cold. They even painted the inside of the team truck pristine white. Why? Just so they could spot tiny little bits of dust that might degrade the performance of their finely tuned bikes. The real magic here is the accumulation of all these unexpected, absurdly specific details.
So, let's dive right into Section 1, the math of improvement.
We've seen how this plays out in elite sports, but when we transition to the hard, undeniable logic of our own daily habits, it reveals a pretty stark mathematical contrast. Think about it. If you get just 1% worse every day for a single year, you decline almost all the way down to 0.03 to be exact. But look at the alternative. If you get just 1% better every single day for 1 year, you don't just become a little bit better, you end up almost 38 times better by the time you're done. It's crazy. What starts out as a minor win or a tiny little setback actually compounds into a completely different destination.
It's like James Clear says, habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. Just like money multiplies in a bank account through compound interest, the effects of your habits multiply as you repeat them. Look at that exponential curve. On any given Tuesday, an atomic habit seems to make practically zero difference. But over the span of months and years, the true value of good habits, and honestly, the heavy cost of bad ones, becomes shockingly clear.
Which brings us to Section 2, the Valley of Disappointment.
Now, of course, just knowing the math doesn't automatically make the process smooth sailing. It's incredibly frustrating when we try to build good habits, right? We so often just quit before ever seeing those massive compounding results. I want you to paint a little picture in your mind for a second. Imagine you're sitting in a freezing cold room. You can literally see your breath in the air. Sitting on a table right in front of you is an ice cube. The room is 25 degrees, and then, ever so slowly, it begins to heat up. 26 degrees, nothing happens. The ice cube just sits there. 27 degrees, now 28 degrees. The tension's kind of building, but physically, the ice is still completely solid. You're putting in the time, the room is definitely getting warmer, but it feels like absolutely nothing is changing at all. 29, 30, 31, and then you land on 32 degrees, boom. Suddenly, the ice begins to melt. That seemingly identical 1-degree shift finally unleashes this huge, completely visible change. This 1-degree shift perfectly illustrates what's called the plateau of latent potential. See, when you start a new habit, you naturally expect progress to be linear, right? You want that straight, steady incline. But reality? Reality is that bottom curve. Your early hard work isn't wasted at all, it's simply being stored. But because we don't see those immediate results, we end up falling right into that shaded area, the valley of disappointment. The key is you have to persist long enough to cross that critical plateau. Once you finally do, people are going to call you an overnight success, but you'll know the truth. You'll know it was all that stored potential from the days when it felt like absolutely nothing was happening.
Let's move on to Section 3, Systems versus Goals. So how do we actually push through that frustrating valley? Well, we need a pretty major paradigm shift in how we approach self-improvement altogether. We really have to challenge the conventional wisdom of goal setting. There's a very clear contrast here. Goals, they're just about the results you want to achieve. Systems, on the other hand, are about the processes that actually lead to those results. Think about it. If you're a coach, your goal is to win a championship. But your system, that's how you recruit, how you manage your players, how you run practice. The crucial point here is kind of mind-blowing. If you completely ignored your goals and only focused on your daily system, you would still succeed. As they say, the score basically takes care of itself.
Let's actually break down the 4 big problems with having a purely goal-oriented mindset. Problem number 1, survivorship bias. I mean, every single Olympian wants to win gold, right? The goal itself doesn't separate the winner from the loser. The system does. Problem 2, achieving a goal is really just a momentary change. Like, if you have a messy room and you finally summon the energy to clean it, awesome, you have a clean room for a day. But if you don't change the sloppy habits that caused it, it's just going to get messy again. Problem 3, goals actually restrict your happiness. You end up telling yourself, oh, I'll be happy when I finally reach my goal, which basically places your joy permanently out of reach in the future. And finally, problem 4, goals are at odds with long-term progress. Think about it. Once a runner finishes a marathon, they usually stop training entirely because the goal is just gone. Systems, however, systems keep you playing the game continuously.
All right, that brings us to Section 4, Identity-Based Habits.
Okay, so we know we need systems instead of goals. Got it. But to build a system that actually sticks around, we have to go much deeper. We have to hit the absolute foundational layer of behavior change. Behavior change basically operates in 3 layers, kind of like an onion. The outer layer is changing your outcomes. That's what you get, like losing weight or writing a book. The middle layer is changing your processes. That's what you do, like starting a new gym routine. But the innermost layer, the true core, is changing your identity. This is all about what you fundamentally believe. The trap is that most people start from the outside in. They try to achieve this shiny new outcome without ever considering the deep beliefs that are actually driving their actions.
To really see this in action, just imagine 2 people trying to resist a cigarette. The first person says, "Oh, no thanks, I'm trying to quit." Now think about that. They still believe at their core that they are a smoker who's just trying to be something else. But the second person, they say, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker." Guys, that is a tiny, tiny linguistic shift, but it signals a massive change in identity. For that second person, smoking is a part of their past, not their present.
And this brings us to a pretty profound realization. Behind every single system of actions, there is a system of beliefs. You can have a shiny new goal and you can map out a perfect new plan, but if you don't change your underlying beliefs, your old identity is eventually going to sabotage those new plans. It's just a fact. Behavior that is incongruent with the self simply will not last. You literally have to change who you believe you are.
Which naturally brings us to the core philosophy of this entire explainer. James Clear sums it up perfectly when he writes, "You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems." Your habits are literally the atoms of your life. Sure, they're incredibly small, but they are the fundamental building blocks that create your systems and ultimately shape your entire identity.
Every single action you take is basically casting a vote for the type of person you wish to become. Now, obviously, no single instance is going to magically transform your beliefs overnight, but as those tiny 1% votes start to build up, the evidence of your new identity becomes completely undeniable. So I want to leave you with this thought to chew on today. Take a real, honest look at your own atomic habits right now. What identity are you voting for today?